What's happening? MC Marcus Chapman here, ready to break down show number 20 in MC 25. This particular show is actually one of my favorites from a whole group of shows that I really am very proud of to this day that were done in the second half of 1998. This particular one comes from December 5th, 1998, and it's called Is Gospel Going Too Far? All right. And basically, the premise of the show was at the time, the WGCI AM, which because you had FM 107.5, which is what I was on, and you had WGCI AM 1390. Now, starting in 1990, the 1390 frequency on AM had been called Dusty Radio 1390, and then at some point they switched it to All Dusty's 1390, and they were specializing in playing, R&B from the 60s and 70s, a little bit of early 80s, but mainly 60s and 70s. And I had actually interned at this station in summer 94. I always say I interned at GCI, which I did, but I was considered more so the AM intern because at the time when I was in college, I was playing stuff from the 70s and early 80s on my college shows. So they put me with the AM because they were playing older music as opposed to the FM, which was focused on current stuff. So it was really interesting to me having an intern there because in late 98, they flipped to gospel. They switched from the older stuff, the older R&B, to gospel music, which they still play to this day, actually, believe it or not. And at the time, that had just taken place. And it's also an example of something I used to do all the time on that particular show. I was hosting a show called The After Set. And every weekend, there was a particular giveaway that the station was doing. It might be a Patti LaBelle weekend. You can win tickets to see Patti LaBelle live in concert. It might be Gerald Levert weekend, tickets to the auto show, whatever the case may be. There was normally a theme for the weekend. And a lot of stations do that. And so this particular weekend, we were giving away tickets to a holiday concert that the station was having with all gospel artists. It was Kirk Franklin, Ann Nesby, Ricky Dillard, Shirley Caesar, who, a lot of folks know her now. You name it, challenge, But at that time, she didn't have beans, greens, potatoes, tomatoes, and all that stuff. She was just going to be at the concert. And so, even though GCI specialized in new music, a lot of the gospel coming out at that time was mixing up elements of R&B and hip hop with the gospel. In particular, Kirk Franklin, he was the biggest one. He had a string of hits in the 90s, Why We Sing, Melodies from Heaven, Stomp, and Lean on Me, and all these songs. So he was becoming really well known for mixing the gospel and the hip hop together. And it was real controversial. There were some people who felt like he was doing a good thing. He was bringing younger people into the church, bringing them into gospel where they might not have been into before. But then on the other hand, you have people who were totally turned off by that. They felt like he was doing the wrong thing and they don't need to have all this with the gospel. It's supposed to be a certain way. So we don't want all that rap mixed in with it, and it was really controversial. But Kirk Franklin was selling so many records, you had to pay attention to it. Even like I wasn't in the gospel, and I'm still not a gospel guy. Even like with Unsung, like they did a gospel episode, an Unsung episode on Marvin Sapp. And I remember when I was told they were doing Marvin Sapp and they were going to do some other gospel artists possibly, I let it be known, well, that's not really my lane. I'm not a gospel guy, so I'm not going to really be able to help y'all with those. But at that time, the gospel merging with the R&B and the rap was real controversial. So I thought it was a perfect subject to discuss on what I call the MC rap session. So that particular show, the overall show that I was doing at that time, the After Set, I had started doing that in March of 97. It was the first weekly show that I had. It was on Friday night going into Saturday morning, 3 to 6 in the morning. And it gave me a chance to really develop my skills because prior to that, I had been on the air staff at GCI. I joined the air staff in June of 96, but I didn't have a show right away. So I was always just on like holiday overnights, Thanksgiving 2 in the morning, Christmas 2 in the morning, I was on. And, it gave me a chance to develop my skills. Well, once I got the weekly show, that really helped me develop because I had a set time that I knew I was going to be in the studio. because it was like 9 months when I didn't know. And that was kind of hard, not just from a development standpoint, but from a reaction standpoint that I was getting from people. People would ask me what time I came on. I didn't have no particular time to tell them, so a lot of times people would brush me off or think I was lying or you ain't nobody, get out of here. So then when I got the app that said at least I had a certain time. So in 97, I was real enthusiastic about that, and I was able to continue to develop. I wasn't good, but I was getting better and better every week. I was working at it. By the time we get to 98, I'm still not there, but I'm getting better. So then by the time we get to summer 98, I was on point. And one of the things that I did is I revamped the whole show in August of 98. I changed all my features. Like originally the after set was mainly known, it was 3 to 6, so every hour had something. So the first hour was usually something I had called the Friday Night Hotspot, where people would call me and tell me what the popping club was, or if they went to a house party, or whatever the case may be, whatever the hotspot was. Sometimes people would call and say they had a personal hotspot, one-on-one, whatever. But it was usually people coming from parties, and I knew that because I went out, I could tell, and I would actually see people leave a club, get in their car, turn on the radio. And normally the person who was on wasn't really that into it because they thought there wasn't nobody listening. And I knew better. So I catered that first hour to those people who were in particular coming from parties or who may have wanted to go out, but they couldn't because they had to work or something like that. Maybe they had to get up early, whatever. So that was the 3 o'clock hour. The 4 o'clock hour, I initially had something called the after set rap session, but that only lasted like maybe about 3 weeks or so. And I was told to stop doing all the features. I had an intro. I was told to stop playing that and focus on, instead of entertaining the audience, focus on getting the basics down in radio, getting the information across the right way, breaking down the info and presenting it to the audience right. And even though the show was less entertaining, that was important in the long run because it helped me become a better on-air personality. And in the last hour, I think I had something called the after set check-in, where people would call me who were at work, on their way to work, or leaving work. Okay, so in the fall of '97, I brought the features back after they weren't there that summer. I added a new intro to the show that Mike Love put together. I gave him the elements. I gave him some phone calls and drops and told him what music I wanted. I wanted the music to Fred Wesley and the JB's Damn Right I'm Somebody. That was like a theme song for me. So that was in the previous intro I had. Mike took that, added a drum beat to it, hooked it up, and it became a hot intro. All right, so that's the first thing that you hear. I usually recorded the couple of segues I did from song to song before the intro kicked in, so you might hear, a drop telling people to stop by the after set, whatever, whether it's artists or station drops that were done by Mitch Faulkner, who was the voice of GCI for a while. And then they started switching it with Pat Garrett. But my drops for the after set, for the most part, were all Mitch Faulkner drops. And the intro would come on. Then I would come on and, let people know what it was, get them all hyped up, let them know the show was popping, let them know what artists were going to be coming up. And I wouldn't say that I had songs from them. I would say they were going to stop by the after set. That was the phrase I would use. And I did that, let people know what the giveaway was, what they had the chance to win, if it was coming up that hour or later on in the show, whatever. And then I would go into the Friday Night Hotspot. But in 98, by summer 98, when I changed the show, instead of doing the Friday Night Hotspot, I changed it to something called What You Own. And that came from a phrase that I was hearing a lot in the streets. People would ask me, yo, hey, Marks, what you on for the night? What you on for the night? I kept hearing people say that. And I was like, I'm going to put that in the show. So I turned What You On into a feature where people would call and let me know what they were on, whatever they were doing at that time. And they would call and let me know. And where the Friday Night Hotspot was geared more so towards people going to parties, What You Own was a little more open. You didn't have to be, you could be coming from a party and say, hey, I'm on, coming from this club or whatever. I just came from the boat, whatever. It could be really, it didn't really matter what people were doing. They would just tell me what they were on, and I would kind of bounce off of it and say something You know, like somebody calls in this particular show, December the 5th of 98, and they say, I'm at work. And I'll be like, where you working at? I'm at Dunkin' Donuts. I'll be like, oh, you want some time to make the donuts type stuff. You know what I'm saying? And sometimes people will call from a hotel or whatever. I'm security. You watching people creep type stuff, you know? So it was just a way to be entertaining, get the phone lines going, you know, make the show worthwhile. And I would do that the first hour. The second hour and the 4 a.m. hour is what was really the meat of the show and where the titles come from as well. Because instead of, you know, just not having anything, I brought back the rap session, but instead of calling it the After Said Rap Session, I called it the MC Rap Session because I was really branding my name at the time, trying to get my name out any way I could. And I didn't even know it was branding, but that's pretty much what I was doing. And so for the MC Rap Session, it was a chance to, you know, have a topic and let people call in and say how they felt. And I would get the topics either from an old Jet magazine article I might go run across. You know, somebody did something like 10 years ago that week, or 15 years ago that week, 20 years ago that week. You know, Michael Jackson on the cover of the Jet, you know, saying he got a new car, you know, and there's one show, I think it's August 29th of that year, where it's about why women like men in expensive cars or something like that, you know. So that would typically be the rap session. I would either get them from stuff like that, something in one of my research books where a song was the #1 song 5 years ago that week, or 10 years ago, or 15 years ago. Or, like in this case, I would take the prize that the station was giving away for that weekend and flip that into the question for the rap session. So since we were giving away tickets to the holiday concert with Kirk Franklin and Ann Nesby and Shirley Caesar and all the gospel artists, I flipped that and used that as an opportunity to ask people if they thought gospel was going too far, because everything I said earlier with the mixing with the hip hop and R&B and everything. So that's where the title of this particular show comes from, is Gospel Going Too Far. And if you listen to the calls, you hear the controversy. You hear the people having the differences of opinion. People saying, I love it, you know, I like it, it's, you know, it's fresh, it's bringing people into the church. And other people saying, nah, I ain't feeling it, you know, it ain't meant to dance to, this is wrong, we don't like it. You know, one brother got real mad. So, you know, I mean, but that was the beauty of that type of radio, you know, giving the platform for the public to say how they felt about what was going on around them. You know, I didn't jump in and try to necessarily say they were right or wrong. You know, sometimes I might interject a question here and there, but for the most part, I let them have they say, you know, and that's what good radio does. You let the public and give the listeners a platform to say how they feel about the world around them. And in this case, it was, you know, is gospel going too far? Matter of fact, I'm at the Illinois Media School right now, and earlier today in one of my classes, I was actually playing some clips from this show, just showing out different examples of things to the students. And one girl actually said that was a good topic. She's like, that's a good topic. And this was almost 20 years ago, 1998. So it still holds up. So I'm really proud of that. And the discussion was good. And then the next feature that I added in summer 98 was a thing called Taking You Back. I had done something called the After Said Slow Dance, where I would play a slow song, and the idea was, you know, you go to a party, you get one real good slow song, okay? Well, with Taking You Back, it didn't have to be a slow song. It could be fast or slow, and I would basically use something, like I said, for the topics, the same sources would provide Taking You Back. So in this case, since I was piggybacking off this Gospel Going Too Far discussion, and I played an older cut from Kirk Franklin that was 2 years old at the time, Melodies from Heaven, which was the remix. I didn't even know it was a remix. But that had been a big hit when I first started hosting that time slot before it was actually mine at late 96. So Taking You Back handled that. Then the final 5 o'clock hour was something called the MC Coffee Club. I started that in August of 98, where instead of people just calling me who were at work or leaving work on their way to work, it could be anybody who was up. So if you were trying to extend your night, you know, you still trying to stay up, you might drink some coffee. If you're trying to wake up, get your day started, you might drink some coffee. So the concept was that the show itself was the coffee to help people stay up later or get their day started so they would have the energy that they needed. So people would call in saying they wanted to be a part of the coffee club, you know. And if I couldn't put them on the air, I'd write the names down and say what part of town they were calling from or wherever, if they was at a hotel, wherever they were, and they would be a part of the coffee club. So the whole show was entertaining. All of those shows that I did in the second half of '98, I'm very proud of them. There's a whole playlist on YouTube, Chicago 1998, WGCI. All those shows go from like mid-August through December. I'm proud of those shows. They still hold up. The topics are still good. And I picked 3 of them for the MC25. So this one right here is Gospel Going Too Far from December 5th of '98. It's the first of the 3 from that same playlist. And I could have picked several more. There was, one about President Clinton, the whole scandal with him and Monica Lewinsky. I used that to ask would you mess around with one of your co-workers? It was a lot of them. Interracial dating, different stuff. So that whole playlist is hot, but there are 3 in the MC25, and this one in particular is Gospel Going Too Far. It's one of my favorites. I enjoy it. It's not necessarily the greatest show I did, which is why it's at number 20. Usually when I started out for that week, I would have been gone out of the studio for a whole week. So I might be a little rusty in the beginning. You might make a mistake. You might hear a mistake or 2 early on in the show. But by the time it got to the end, I was rolling. And by this point, I had already started doing Saturday night 6 to 10 with Dr. Love. That started October 24th. So it was really a good way to give a hot show on my own and get ready for Saturday night in prime time, which was the big show at that time. So this show right here, number 20 in the MC25, is Gospel Going Too Far, WGCI Chicago, December 5th, 1998. Really proud of it. Check it out. And coming up next at number 19 is another overnight show. 3 to 6 in the morning, around that time, that's overnight. There's a different one from a different market, and it's really good for completely different reasons, and that'll be coming up in the next video. All right, right now, number 20 on the MC25. All right, later.